In this lecture, we will start discussing the vector type. Now, vectors are sequence containers that represent variable size arrays. Remember these two terms, containers and variable size arrays. Now, let's see what we mean by these. Containers actually means they contain other objects. So, vectors contain other objects, and by variable size arrays, we mean that they are a collection of objects. So, they could be collection of other objects which can be of variable size. So, they are actually something that holds other objects. So, keep that in mind. Now, let's see how we make use of the vectors. For using vectors, we have to include the appropriate headers. So, while using strings, we saw that we were include string. Similarly, for vectors, we have to include the header vector, and then also we can make use of the standard library vector to make use of the vector-based functions. Or if you are including the namespace std, that would be enough. But remember, this is the library that would contain all the vector type functions and things related to the vector. Vector is a class template. Now let's try to understand what we mean by class template. A class template is a blueprint from which specific class types can be created. Try to understand the meaning of this from the name itself, which is class template. Template means it is a blueprint, and from this we can create specific class types. Okay, it will become clear as we move ahead. When we talk about template, remember that templates are not functions or classes, but they are guidelines for the compiler to use or create classes or functions. So remember, when we say a template, it is not a function or class by itself, but it is just a guideline or the blueprint which we use to create classes or functions. Now, the process that describes the procedure the compiler employs to build classes or functions out of templates is called instantiation. Alright, so keep these prerequisites in mind as we discuss the vector type. We specify which class to instantiate by supplying additional information depending on the template. Let's see what is this additional information that we need to supply. Here we are interested in vectors. So let's see how. We enclose it in two angle brackets after the template's name. Since we are dealing with vectors, let's see how it is done for vectors. For vectors, we specify the type of the objects that the vector will hold like this. We specify the keyword vector, and within angle brackets, we specify the type that it is going to hold, which is integer for this example, and this is the name of the vector, that is myvec. Okay? Seeing this example, I hope all these things now falls into place in your mind. Here, this vector is a template that we are trying to use. And what is this template? It is going to be a collection of the integer type objects. Okay? And how do we specify it? We specify it by enclosing it in angle brackets after the template's name, which is vector. Then here we specify the name of the vector that we want to use. Alright, so let's take an example and see how this is used in a program. And then the details of that we will discuss in the coming lectures. So in this example, here is a complete program that makes use of vectors. So as you can see, we include the usual header that we have IOStream, and then it is very important to include the vector header. Don't forget this. And you can also include the vector library namespace that I showed you, or if you are just using namespace std, that would be enough. And here in the main function, we are declaring that vector that I showed you in the example in the previous slide, vector, and it is of the type integer. So it is a template that is going to hold integer type objects, and then the name of the vector is myvec. And in this myvec, I am storing these integer values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we see we have to put it in curly braces, and each of the values are separated by comma. Okay, so we see that this vector is holding integer values. Now you must be getting an idea of what are vectors. They are containers that are used for holding other objects. So we see in this vector myvec, it is a container and it is holding these integer type objects. Now I hope the definition makes sense to you. Next, we would like to just print out these values. For that, I am making use of the range for statement. So I say for an int I, which is a variable that will be used for going over all these objects here. And then after colon, I write the name of the vector, which is myvec. And then we are printing it out, cout, I, and a new line. So all these values should be printed on new lines. Okay, let's run this program in Visual Studio Code and see if it is working. Okay, so here we have the program called vec1.cpp, the same one that I showed you. Let's compile and run this. Okay, so as I compile and run it, you can see that these values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are printed on new lines 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have successfully defined a vector, which is a container for holding integer objects in this example. And then we have stored the integer values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have successfully printed it out. And also remember, initially, as we began this lecture, I told you that it can hold variable size arrays. That means the size of the objects can vary. So here you see, I did not specify anywhere that I am going to store only 5 values here. I just put 5 values like this. So if I want, I can put more values like this, or I can also reduce some of the values like this. So we see that the size is varying. It is dynamic and we don't have to specify anywhere that we are going to use a fixed size. With this example, I hope you have understood what are vectors, and I hope all the definitions and all the lines that we saw in this lecture have now become clear by looking at this example. Alright, so that was just the introduction to vectors. We will discuss more about its definition and how it is used and its various use cases in the coming lectures. So I hope this introduction was clear to you. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.